Faced with an uncontrollable number of drug overdose deaths, North Carolina leaders were seeking solutions, so they passed a bipartisan law meant to hold drug dealers accountable.
But 2 years later, a WCNC Charlotte defender's investigation found police rarely arrest suspects for this newly created charge, which is called death by distribution. It's a felony that holds a sentence up to 40 years in prison. But our Nate Morbido found few drug dealers across the state actually face this consequence.
Court records show it's especially rare in the city of Charlotte. In fact, a drug dealer is more likely to get arrested for death by distribution in a neighboring rural county than right here. A knock at the front door just before midnight.
It was the cops to tell my mom that he was dead.
Yet another parent taken by fentanyl. Another child left wondering why.
I learned a lot about him and his struggles.
Izzy D'Alo has become much closer to her father in the years since his death, discovering he only started relying on drugs after a brain injury. But there is one key detail that remains a mystery. Who gave James D'Alo the fentanyl that killed him?
I want justice for him.
Unsatisfied with the Stallings Police Department's investigation into her father's death, still pending more than 12 months later, the UNC Chapel Hill journalism student started asking questions.
I didn't want him to die and just be another junkie.
It's a time when fatal overdoses are more common than murders. But now there's a law in place to hold drug dealers accountable. Even so, court records show police across North Carolina have charged fewer than 75 people with death by distribution since 2019. During that same time frame, we've identified nearly 7,000 suspected overdose deaths.
Our stance is an aggressive stance on it.
Lieutenant James May is with the Union County Sheriff's Office. His agency has used cell phone evidence, surveillance footage, and witness statements to charge 4 people with the crime, out of roughly 40 fatal overdoses. That's on the high end, according to court data, compared to others across the state. And May tells us more charges are on the way.
We feel like it's a stance that every law enforcement agency should have.
Prosecutors say one of the suspects pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter. The 3 other cases remain pending. While he only has anecdotal evidence, Lieutenant May thinks the arrests are sending a message.
We have seen throughout our investigations that some dealers will not come into Union County now.
State data show other rural counties have charged several suspects too, but just over the city limits in Charlotte, where there have been at least 9 times more fatal overdoses in that time, police have charged half as many people with death by distribution.
It's not that we don't want to.
Lieutenant Sean Mitchell is supervisor of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department's Vice and Narcotics Unit.
That is a very complicated case to make.
He says in order to file charges, investigators need to prove the drug dealer sold to that one person, and the amount they provided was enough to cause the user's death. Prosecutors dismissed the only 2 cases CMPD brought forward linked to the same case, a woman who bought drugs from 3 people leading up to her death. Court records reveal even after the police department's extensive investigation, prosecutors couldn't prove any one person sold the crack cocaine that killed her.
The only thing that the death by distribution law did was take away a malice element.
District Attorney Spencer Merriweather says while the law was well-intentioned, the common lack of hard evidence limits its use.
I believe that the death by distribution legislation certainly presents yet another tool that prosecutors and others can use. It certainly is not going to be a fix-all to what remains extremely challenging cases.
How many more people are going to die from this person who's distributing that, and they haven't found him?
Izzy D'Alo knows cases that are unsolved feel unresolved.
My dad needs his justice.
She gave police her father's phone and continues to push them to find his killer, but not just for him.
It definitely gave me another reason to help give that voice to people who no longer have one.
This student journalist, changed by a late-night door knock, hopes her questions will open doors for other grieving families too. Even though prosecutors dismiss CMPD's death by distribution cases, those suspects face other drug charges. Mecklenburg County prosecutors also have a death by distribution case pending out of Huntersville. At CMPD, Nate Morbido, WCNC Charlotte.